Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. I'd like to welcome here Jack Straw, who's a former cop, federal inmate, and an author. So we're going to get to know him, and I'm assuming this is going to be a pretty interesting conversation. So, Jack, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, I'm 66 years old right now as we speak. I was born in Iowa, pretty much raised here. I did live in a couple other states, but for the most part, I was in law enforcement. I'll jump ahead to that. Back in the late 70s into the 90s, I made captain by the time I was 26. I had a sparkling law enforcement career, left that to go into private business. And that's where I got crosswise with the Fed. And I had an insurance agency and I stole money. They said misappropriate, which is another term for stealing it. And so I ended up with a 15-year bid in the federal prison. So that's a shocker. I'll guarantee you that. But it's something that you learn to live through. So I guess at that point there, when you're inside like that, you learn a lot of things about yourself. And so I've lived on both sides of the tracks, and right on the tracks with a train running right at me. So I guess we can start with that.
So your book is about your experience?
Well, the book I'm working on right now is, I wrote two while I was there. One was about the polygraph, and I was aware when I was in law enforcement, we use lots of lie detector, the polygraph. It doesn't work. It's just a torture element to get people to confess. We use it. I saw guys use it. I ran to a guy in prison named Doug Williams who had worked in the White House and done some other things. And he was a polygraph expert, and he'd done it for years until he just said that this is such crap, we got to change this. And he went about getting some laws changed. He worked for two presidents, Johnson and Nixon, so he was very much an inside guy. So I wrote the book about him and his life trying to get rid of the polygraph. He did get, like I said, some laws passed. Doug died during COVID, unfortunately. But he was quite the guy. The second book I wrote really is based on characters that I met in prison, but the story is just a comedy trip that deals going across country trying to solve a problem for the government, and it's just some funny spewings out of my head, and I'm actually surprised. I've gotten some really great reviews from the book, from a lot of people that I didn't think they thought anything was funny, so I'm pretty happy about that. So the book I'm working on now is about the prison experience. And not to go on a whole lot of that, it's not what people really think it is. I've watched a number of shows about it since I got out, and y'all talk about the violence and all these things. Prison is actually kind of stupid when you get right down to it. I was in a pretty violent place when I started out, La Tuna FCI down on the Mexican border. Got to be friends with, well, George Jung, who was the topic of the movie Blow. Johnny Depp played. George and I used to hang out. And there are some tough guys in that prison, but then you start to see all the strange things around you. They're just ridiculous. And it's not all violence like on TV and stuff.
Now, George, when you met him, and I did see the movie, in fact, I've seen it several times. How close to the real story was that, or do you know?
Well, he and I talked about that because I'd never seen the movie. And when I
Mhm.
got to prison, and he said, you got to watch it. They have TVs in the areas there. We watched it. There's a couple parts I asked him about, and he says, it's pretty accurate. He says they fluff up a few things, but like I asked him like the money in the room and stuff. He said, oh yeah, that was. I said, really? He goes, yeah, they were weighing it. They didn't even count when they weighed it. But he said without going, he didn't go into detail. He said about 75%. He told me, but it's pretty close, which I think in the Hollywood world, pretty accurate. I'm guessing.
And if I read correctly, you met some NFL players and a few other famous people in there?
Yeah, there's different levels of prisons. When I went there first, La Tuna FCI, it's called behind the fence. You have to have razor wire fence and all this stuff around you. So then when you're there, there's major league drug dealers. There's bank robbers who doing anybody with a sentence of 10 years or longer goes behind the fence. And so you got guys with higher security, people who are risk. There's some pretty bad stuff going on there. You can work your way down after you're there for a while to go to what's called a camp. They send you to a camp, And the camp is completely different than the razor wire fence, because the camp there's a lot of freedoms, and you go from the drug dealers and the people who have committed major federal offenses. You get cartel guys, all that stuff. Now you go to people like New Mexico politicians, bankers, lawyers, doctors, a couple of NFL football players that got into real estate fraud. Is anybody who's nonviolent with a short sentence. And it was the big culture shock for me to go into prison behind the fence with some of these guys. It was just as big after I'd been there 4 or 5 years to go to the camp and meet these people who were a lot closer to ordinary than I've seen for a few years.
Now, you said you were in a more violent area when you first got in?
Yeah, Latuna, and it's not the most violent prison, but yeah, there's some pretty violent things that go on there. You're out in the Mexican desert, well, on the American side of the river, down by Juarez, and so there's some pretty tough guys in that outfit. There are certain rules in prison when you get there, and when you know what the rules are, you follow the rules, you'll be okay. You don't follow the rules, it's not like out here. There's no deferred sentence. If you screw up something and you shouldn't do it, you're going to answer for it, and you're not going to like what they come down with for a punishment. And so you get in, when you're in Latuna, you've got like Serenos, these gangs, and 505s, dirty white boys, Aryan Brotherhood guys, that type of thing, and they all have different places they sit, different TVs they watch, different times they use the workout thing. And so don't go in the workout area if it's not your time. Be a whole different kind of workout,
Right.
When you get to the camp, it's like living in a bunch of little bad boys got in trouble and they got sent to their room. Everything in a camp is available. I mean, it's not supposed to be, but you can get your hands on anything there if you want. I mean, and I mean, so if anybody's read about the prison system lately, they've heard about all the cell phones and all this stuff. It's all over the place. Pretty hard to police a camp. There's no fence around it. And like one correctional officer assigned to 500 people,
Dang. Now, are you at a higher risk of getting hurt if you're law enforcement or former law enforcement?
Well, that was one of the tricky things when I got there. They took me into a side room, and this little short captain, and the book comes out, I do kind of pick on him, but he said, don't tell anybody. He said, you were a big shot when you were a cop. You're not a big shot here. Don't let anybody know, and I had no intentions of that. When I went into that prison, basically I had decided my goal was I was going to commit, but not in the traditional way, because the idea of leaving everything for 15 years was like, I'm not doing this, But I thought I would do. My father committed suicide in 1980, and I thought, I'm not going to do it like that. I remember the impact on the family. So I thought I would do is I go pick up the two of the meanest guys I can find and get into with them, have them do it for me. In the midst of that, I figured out right in the middle, I didn't really want to die that bad. And I thought, I'm going to try this out and see how it goes. So I survived that little thing there and did pretty well, actually. And that's where I kind of glommed onto things, thanks to people like George Jung, like writing and those kind of things that kind of save your brain. Because when you're incarcerated, they've incarcerated your body. You're not going anywhere. But your brain, the only freedom you got's in your head. And if you use it, you'll be okay. If you don't, you're not going to turn out very good. It's not going to go well.
Being on the inside, did that change your perspective of how you looked at criminals?
It changed my perspective on a lot of things. I, coming from a law enforcement background, I used to believe like a lot of law enforcement does, and I'm not picking on law enforcement. I say this, the guys, I can only speak for law enforcement my era. There's an us versus them mentality a lot of times where, anybody who crosses that line, where you might be defending the public, but it's adversarial all the time. You get to know some of these people a little different when you're living with them, the Crips and those guys are there, and you get to hang out with them, play basketball with them and stuff. And then suddenly kind of like, this isn't exactly what I thought it was. So you get appreciation for that. And I think the biggest thing is I take absolutely nothing for granted. And I mean nothing. I don't live with cockroaches running around in your bunk and stuff at night, and scorpions in the desert, clicking on the floor, getting in your shoes. Living with guys you don't really know, can't really trust, don't see your family, being able to talk on the phone just for 15 minutes at a stretch, if you can afford the phone rates. Um, Eating beans and rice a couple times a day for 8,000 years, it seemed like, So out here, I take nothing. I appreciate everything. I appreciate a traffic jam. It's because I haven't been out that long. I got out in 2019, so uh,
Wow.
yeah, so it's a different world when we come back.
What was the first thing you did when you got out?
Well, it's a I got to tell you a short story about the trip. Obviously, it's written all over your face when you get out. So when I first got out, they give you a bus ticket. They take you to the bus depot. I went Charleston West. I was the last place I was at was in Kentucky, a place called Big Sandy. It was a camp, and they have a driver take me up to Charleston, West Virginia to get on the bus, and they give you your bus ticket and you sit there and they're used to inmates. It's a small bus station. The woman said, "Honey, your bus will be right over there." I didn't. I'm just barely staring in space. I haven't been out for a long time. It's kind of a weird feeling. So I took a bus to Columbus, Ohio, and I'm sitting in the bus depot. Um, Now I've got street clothes on and stuff. I've gotten some street clothes they gave me, and like just a little black bag. I'm just sitting there waiting for a bus, and this tall black gentleman walked over me. Says, "How you doing?" I said, "Okay." He goes, "You need anything?" I said, "No." "Why?" He goes, "How long were you down?" I said, "How could you tell?" "Oh, been there, seen that look." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He sat down, we talked a while. I said, "You need it?" I said, "I work back here in this coffee shop. You want a coffee or something?" A real nice guy. Two guys did that to me there. So I had to look in the mirror. I thought, what are they looking at? No one else could see that. But these two guys, and they both been in prison. They said, you can tell the look on the face. You're sitting there by yourself, just staring. And that was kind of a strange experience. So that's a long answer to your question. When I first got out, I sat and stared. People walking by, people going in here. There was like a restaurant or a cafe or something down the street from the bus depot. People walking in and out of there and stuff, and it's like it was all new to me again, like being a virgin to the world, kind of.
What year did you say you went in?
I went in 2009, got 2019. I qualified for early release under the First Step Act because of my age, and I'd done all the qualifying credits. I was an instructor in school, and I taught, took all the classes, did all, stroked the pen across all the boxes and stuff. So I called. I was on home confinement when I first got back with an ankle monitor, and so I went to my daughter's house. I couldn't go outside, couldn't do anything for a while, and that's all changed a couple of years ago. So I'm out. I work at the hospital, and I write books and play songs, and I'm remarried and almost a normal person.
Well, 10 years. How much changed in that 10 years?
Well, when I come back to where I'm from, I saw a lot of new places have been built. Places I asked about were gone.
Yeah.
Um, and this is the really weird thing. A lot of people, like my friends and things like that, God, they'd aged terrible, and I felt like I hadn't. You
Mm.
know, and some of them said, "You look pretty well preserved." Because one thing a prison does do, and this is a strange thing, and I don't recommend anyone go to prison for this, but once you get used to it, it takes away all the stresses of life. You don't have any bills. You don't have to, you have a job, but you go there and you come back. You play basketball. I played basketball for 5 years straight. I ran a marathon while I was in prison.
Oh,
All these
wow.
things you can never do out here because you got to work, you got kids, you got a family, you got a mortgage and stuff like that. Uh, and so all those stressors are gone. I don't think you age quite as fast. My health has never, ever, and I've always been an athlete. My health has never been as good as at 66.
Mm.
And I got that in prison. So I did get that. Now, it doesn't work that way for everybody, but a lot of people it does. So I guess everybody changed but me. That's not true, but that's the way it seemed.
Well, I had moved off to Austin and we just moved back to Houston a few months ago. And we've been away almost 10 years. And as much as things changed, I didn't recognize some of the places I went to. on all these new businesses. And like I said, there's places that I'd known that are gone, and I, and I'm out here, and it changed. I couldn't imagine being behind bars and coming out and seeing things.
Yeah, it is. I remember taking a drive with my daughter. I remember going down to get my driver's license when I got out, which is like now I'm a kid again. I'm going down to my license and stuff. And I'm sitting there in a row at the Department of Transportation. There's 11 people, none of whom was over 16 years old. They couldn't have been, and me, and they're all looking at me like, but when my daughter and I took a drive, I said, let's go out by here, let's go out by there. She said, that hasn't been there for years. And so the one thing they developed while I was gone, and I don't know if you guys have these, they're called the roundabouts in the road, where there used to
Yep.
be they didn't have those. So I get my license and I'm driving down the road and my daughter goes, slow down, slow down. I said, up there, it's a roundabout. I said, what the hell's a roundabout? The one you about run over, stop. I said, isn't there supposed to be a stoplight here? She's, Dad, you gotta get it together.
Yeah,
So that was a culture shock to me.
yeah, we got them here in my hometown, and we didn't have those, when I lived here before. And it's crazy. I don't like those things. Did you lose people while you were in there? I mean, like they didn't want to have anything to do with you anymore.
Um, you know, I've got to say my family is very supportive of me. I embarrassed her, but I pled guilty. I mean, I was literally just ready to. I said, "Send me, just go. Let's get this done." But my family stepped by me. I have friends that I can't really say there are people I'm sure have. But that strange thing is when I got back, I guess I kind of anticipated that there'd be the whisper, that kind of stuff. But one of the things I think people forget is people's lives move on. You're not their life. They have things going on, and you may come up into casual conversations, and I'm sure I did because actually I'm from a very small town, and I've been back there a couple of times to see my grandson play baseball and football, that kind of stuff there, and then I've got another grandson playing football, and I go see them, and there's some people kind of look at you funny. Is that him? Is that him? And then now I just go talk to him. So for the most part, I'm sure I have, but I'm oblivious to it apparently.
You think you'd ever written a book if you hadn't gone in?
Pardon me?
Do you think you'd ever written a book if you hadn't gone in?
No. Um, One time they do give you in prison, and no pun intended, is time. Is
Right.
and so there's three types of people in prison. This is my own categorization, but there are the crime people. I call it a one-time crime thing. Guys like me and a lot of guys committed one time, and the feds got my attention. They ain't got to worry about me. Then you got the criminals, and these guys are actually in there planning their next deal, having schools together, sitting around these picnic tables, figure out how to do it, not get caught. Um, they make no bones about it. That's their plan. And then you have the guys that I'm going to be nice, but they're crazies, and I guess I lovingly call them that because some of them were provided a lot of entertainment, but also nice guys. They're wrong. They're all wrong in the head. Um, but the time that those guys provided all of the stuff for you to write, but you get that time, and if you can you'll get involved with the wrong group doing the wrong stuff if you don't use your time. It's very simple to do that. Uh, that line is so thin it doesn't even exist, and so there's some shape. And writing was my thing, and then and that helped me. And a lot of guys got into it, and other guys did meditation, whatever it is, bird watching, but do something. But that's the long answer to your question. No way. There'd been no way I'd have done it.
Well, I guess some folks are going to come out worse, and some folks are going to come out better.
Yeah, you don't come out the same. It's not possible. I mean, I don't. No, you don't. It wouldn't be possible.
So this new book that you've got coming out, is there a lesson to be learned in this book?
The prison book, you mean?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's coming out this next year. I don't know if there's a lesson in it as much as it's. I want people to understand that um, you can't generalize. and people generalize all the time. We do it in racism, we do it in religion, we do it in everything. And I guess the only place I can give a firsthand observation that you can't generalize is people are in prison, men or women in prison, because there's some very talented people there. I met some people that were so extremely intelligent. I saw a couple of young guys rapping in prison. I'm not a fan of rapping. When I saw these guys, I became a fan. These guys were amazing. And you if you're not afraid to cross barriers and talk with other people from other cultures, you can't generalize. Now, there are some really bad people there who would mess you up with a heartbeat, but also that adds to the fact you can't generalize. So I think that's really the point. If there's a point to, otherwise, I just want to tell people that, and maybe they get understanding. Maybe it'll just be entertaining to them.
With the books that you do have out, where can people get them?
They're on Amazon. First one's called False Confessions. It's about the polygraph and Doug Williams, but False Confessions. It's been out for a while, but it's kind of getting a resurgence because in the back of the book, there's actually a manual on how to pass the polygraph that Doug wrote. And people use it. I mean, it's they do. And so that's it. The second book is called Codename Eclectics, and it's just a comedy. It's also on there. It's just every character in it, man and woman, are based on guys that I met in prison. But I wanted to take them out of the prison, just take them out of the prison for a while. What would happen if a State Department courier was kidnapped and there were some documents they wanted to get back, but no one trusted anybody in the government to get them, so they went out and got regular people on the street, and they come up with these guys, and it's pretty funny. I'm biased. I think it's funny. If people want to buy it and they don't think it's funny, let me know, and I'll say I can't be funnier next time. But I just a bunch of stuff I had I wanted to get out that I thought was funny at the time. The next book, I'm gonna, like I said, I actually have two books coming out. I'm doing one about prison, and I'm actually going to do about when I was in law enforcement after that. But those two books are out there. I also have a website. If you want to go to it, you want to see them on there. Or if you want to get a little sample of what I do, you can go to the website, read my blog. So that's just JACKS-LRC.com, jacks-lrc.com. And take a look at it. It's also got a link to my album that's out there, and you can listen to it free. I'm not even trying to sell you anything. It's free. Just let me know. I'm actually, if I want people to go to the website for, and look at the blogs and listen to the songs, it takes you to their YouTube channel. It's free. And just tell me what you think. Am I going down the right path or not?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll put the links in the description so it'd make it easier for folks to get there.
That.
Jack, thank you so much for your time, man. I've really appreciated the conversation.
Well, I appreciate you had good questions. Sometimes people, they kind of stammer around when we get to talk about prison. They think you're going to hurt my feelings. And I always tell people, when you've stared down the double barrel of the federal government, not much is going to hurt your feelings after that. So,
well, I'm an expert after watching all those movies.
Yeah, there's a lot of those around. I used to think I was an expert at a lot of things too, and then reality hit me between the eyes. So.
Well, last night's movie was Death Race. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but
I have not.
Well, it was about some guys in prison, and they had to do this race, and I tried to kill each other before they got to the finish line, what have you, and whoever wins would win their freedom. So, nothing like that happened.
Not quite. But it's no different. I'm a classic movie fan, and so any movie about prison I've seen goes back to the days of Humphrey Bogart and those guys. I remember watching one where they called the correctional officer, like we call them COs, they called them screws. I thought, would these guys even know what you meant if you called them a screw? No one, whoever said that.
Thank you again, Jack, and I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button, and for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network